everybody. Welcome to another episode of Murphy's Law. We've got one heck of an episode to dive into. With me today is Jenna Belk. Hey, Jenna.
Hello.
How's it going?
Pretty good. How are you?
Doing good, doing good. So for this episode, I wanted to dive back. I went back to your very first time hosting the Atheist Experience.
Yes, that was an interesting day.
You had so many good calls. You had so many.
I did. It was fun.
Yeah. So there was one that I wanted to dive into and talk about today. And let me show you the beginning of that and see if you might remember it.
Mm-hmm.
Hey. Hi, Justin. You're talking to Jenna and V. It says that there's a purpose and meaning in the universe, which means that God exists. It is a proven fact.
So just full disclosure.
You remember that?
I think I do, yeah.
So I'm trying my best to kind of keep track of what this guy says because he's just so rapid fire. So purpose and meaning in the universe. We're gonna hold on to this, okay? So this is why he called in, right?
Right.
Okay. Let's go on to the next clip.
So just full disclosure. Not only am I claiming that, but I'm also claiming that I'm God's messenger. I have a YouTube channel.
Okay. What was your reaction with that? Because that was right after asking that question. First, right off the bat, I'm God's messenger and I have a YouTube channel.
Oh, God. I'd want to know what his message is.
Yeah. The very first thing that struck me on that one was this guy's an opportunist and he just wants to utilize the platform of the Atheist Experience to prop up his channel. And you both kind of...
I don't think he did a very good job.
No, I don't think so either, because you both hopped in and you were like, well, let's talk about the thing instead of doing that. I know that we talked about that afterwards, and since then you've gotten actually a lot better about calling that out. You know, if somebody wants to utilize your platform, tough noogies.
Yeah.
You know, if they want to call in, cool. You know, here's what you can do. You can earn it. If you really want to say, you know what, here's how you earn it. You sit down with me, you have a good conversation. And if you have proven yourself to be good in this talk, then maybe we can let you plug yourself afterward, but not out the gate like that. But okay, so we've got.
But I took it.
You did. And God's messenger. So we now have purpose and meaning and God's messenger. This is two claims.
Completely separate. Let's see if he explains what those not explains it, but let's see if he can provide evidence for those claims and kind of back them up. Right.
First of all, when I say that I'm God's messenger, all I mean is that I'm speaking truth.
Oh no.
Speaking truth. Now we're talking about truth.
Yeah, we are.
Oh man.
You see, when he says he's God's messenger, it just means he's speaking. Words have to have, we have to understand what we mean when we're saying things to be able to effectively communicate with one another. And what I've seen with this kind of approach, and one of the things that I want to talk about in this episode is I actually recently went over another caller like this who called in to talk heathen and talked about it with V. What do you do when all they do is rapid fire out assertions without giving?
Call him out.
I mean,
or hang up.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
what do you think?
I think that I want to find a good way to give the viewers that tool. The tool being, if somebody responds to your question with more questions, or if they respond to you asking them about their assertion by just giving more assertions, they're not actually doing their argument a favor, and they're not providing evidence for their argument. All they're doing is stacking the crap even higher without giving a single shred of evidence toward it. And this guy has been a master of that. He keeps going, right? So he said in the last thing, he said, when he says he's God's messenger, he simply means that he's speaking truths, right? All right, let's see what is next.
Why wouldn't you just say you're speaking truths?
Well, because the truth is something that I'm submitting to.
Now we're talking about submission.
So the question was, why don't you just say that you're speaking truths? He didn't even respond to you. He didn't even answer your question. He wasn't talking to you. He was waiting for his turn to talk so he could say the next thing that he'd prepared.
I guess what you can kind of tell in his tone of voice. He's like, okay, and well, and it's just like he's ready to, like he's reading or something.
Yeah.
Like he's ready to just list off stuff.
Absolutely. And so far what he's listed off is there's purpose and meaning in the universe, that he's God's messenger, but by being God's messenger, what he really means is that he's speaking truths, and that truth is what you submit to. It's a good thing we've got clarity, right? And you really tried to genuinely sum things up because you wanted to communicate in this. And that's something that I love it. And that's our job, right? We're trying to have a clear conversation with direction, and we're taking that direction towards, what is the crux of this argument? What exactly are you saying? And you had a valiant effort, Jenna.
When you're talking about somebody or something, revealing the universe to you, and you're God's messenger, but that only means that you're speaking in truth. Like, why are you going to great lengths to put this into like fluffy language?
You did. You really tried. And I gotta say, all of this stacked with the fact that this was your first episode hosting.
I was nervous.
Yeah.
I was so nervous.
I mean, how did that feel with all of this coming in? I mean, I know that first time I really got in the hot seat, it took so much just to think about what the heck is going on. And you were clearly holding on to what the person was saying and bringing those things together.
I guess I'm lucky that I get to, when I'm in that seat, when I'm on AXP at least, I get in this zone where I'm like focused on the call, and all I'm trying to do is understand. And then I'm just going with it, And so I guess when I was in that seat, I was able to kind of take the conversation whatever way I wanted to go. So it was definitely different, but I don't know, I guess it's why it went the way it did.
Well, I mean, you had a good eye on pacing, that's for sure. And so you tried to sum up all of his stuff, to him so that you can start addressing all of the claims that he made. And so, cool. You repeated it all back to him, and here's his response.
Well, the reason why I call the thing that revealed to me, this thing God, is because I'm in submission to it. So anything that you're in submission to is called a God. God is just a title that you put on things, like president.
No.
So God's not real.
So he instead of responding to any of the claims that you repeated back to him, things that he had said, instead of answering a single one of them, he just dove into more assertions. There was at no point here that he was actually, giving reasons or evidence to anything to back up his claims other than just more wild assertions. Now God is anything that you submit to. And, to be honest, that's something that I've heard before. I don't know if you ever did. Atheists, they just want to be their own gods, right?
Yeah, I've somebody close to me ended up saying, "Oh, you just love sex."
Yeah.
I was like, "Well, I do, but
that's not why
point.
I left." Yeah, and so I think, trying to be charitable with it, I got to think that he's getting that from.
For sure.
That well, as an atheist, you just want to be your own God, and he took it in a different direction. And it's also, I think, at least it seems obvious to me, maybe I could be wrong, but it seems like he's had all of these ideas spinning around and hasn't actually had the chance to engage them in the real world.
Well, I mean, it's confusing. I remember being like that. Like the world just didn't make sense.
Yeah.
at all. It just didn't.
And you're trying.
And I just thought that was just how it was going to be forever until I died and went to heaven, and then everything would make sense. God would tell me all the answers to all the questions that I had.
Wow. Yeah. I don't know. It seems like this guy got into this place of redefining things so that it, got easier for him to understand, and then just went off.
Maybe.
But again, you tried to connect with him. And so
Mm-hmm.
he had said that God is anything that you submit to. And so you try, again, valiantly.
I can work with that. There are things that I submit to, and I believe in that.
Yeah, and completely give yourself to. So God's plural.
Wait, completely give yourself to?
That's so me. Wait, I don't know.
Well, he snuck something else in there, right? You were trying to meet him with his definition so you could have a useful conversation. He was not here to have a useful conversation. He was here to...
So
Go ahead.
is that a point where I should have called him out and brought it back to the beginning, or should I just keep going with it there?
I think it's your approach, but I would pick one of those, one of the claims. It could be any of them. It could be purpose and meaning. And okay, we're going to stick to purpose and meaning. Okay, you say you're God's messenger. Well, what's God's messenger? Okay, God's messenger is speaking truths. Okay, do you understand how that can be very, very confusing, because there in the Bible are messengers from God, and that's not what they're talking about. So why are you using that crappy definition? Because all it's doing is confusing people.
Right.
Well,
Maybe he's not talking about the God in the Bible.
Well, at that point,
Sounds like he's talking about the president.
something. And yeah, exactly, right? God is anything that you submit to. Okay, so you're saying you're definitely not an Abrahamic, faith type person. What use is the definition of God? Because now you've given us several. And they're not all the same. They're not synonymous. You need to clearly communicate, because at this point, the definitions are fuzzing together. And when that happens, it's very, very difficult to piece those things apart. And if it's acceptable, if it's something that we should be believing, it's something that you should be wanting to convince us of. If you have good evidence for it, we should be able to take each of those things apart and look at it and go, hey, yeah, that's fair. That's a good point, and go from there. But we're not getting that with this guy. And so you try and you say, okay, I'll accept that, what you submit to. And he says, and give yourself to entirely. What? And there was this, there were a couple of small asides that you tried, and he was just waiting his turn. He was just, and then
Spewing.
more and more and more. And so we've got...
Anything that is true, I believe. No matter what it is, as long as it's true, I believe it.
How do you know if it's true? Yeah.
Well, in the same way that you know that anything is true. So
I don't know anything is true necessarily.
That's true. We're both agnostics.
Okay, that one on its own is just hilarious. I like that. That's just fun. That's just fun. But yeah, again, not responding to a single question you're asking, just throwing out more. I did not make a little card for the name of this argument, because there are different ways that you can describe it. And essentially, it's an informal fallacy, because it's not actually logically fallacious.
What do you mean?
So if you were to write out his arguments, a good number of them may be valid. They may not be self-contradictory. That said,
Doesn't mean that they're true.
well, they're not holding each other up. Yeah, they don't have any meat to them. All it is just assertion, assertion, assertion. He's not even getting to the point where he's building a case for anything. He's just throwing stuff out there. And so when I was looking even at informal fallacies, the best I could get to was Gish Gallop, or the ad nauseum, approach.
I don't know either one of those.
So the Gish Gallop is named after a Christian apologist who would go on TV shows, and he would throw out 10 arguments, just get as much as he could, because he knew that it took way longer to respond to each and every one of them. And so if he gave 10 things just rapid fire on the air, and then it went to the atheist, they're only able to maybe explain 2 or 3 of them in the time allotted.
Right.
And so leaving all 7 that were not contested.
That's something that I remember about watching the debates when I was in the process of deconverting, was that they were never long enough. It felt like they never finished the conversation.
Right. And debates are supposed to be at least a little bit better, you know, with,
They're usually about 2.5 hours.
yeah, with the kind of format that we're in. No,
Mhm.
you got a couple minutes, and if somebody's throwing out 100 things, there's no way that you're going to be able to get to each of them. You just can't.
Yeah.
If you want to turn it into a 20-hour thing, so just so that you can understand his definitions, then
Yeah.
maybe we can get somewhere useful. But until then,
See, that's the thing. People keep saying, like, you're acting like you don't know what they're talking about. I'm like, I legitimately don't know what they're talking about.
right. And so as we go through it, it helps to make sure that we have clear definitions for what we think. That way, if someone gives a wonky definition, you can compare the two and go, hey, here's your definition, here's mine. Why should I pick yours?
Well, we might have messed up on that, because when he was talking about how do you know what's true, and I said, I don't know that anything's true necessarily, I was talking about absolute truth, and I don't know that he was. So I might have twisted that.
Well, actually, he gave a definition for truth. That's the next clip. Well, here it is.
So truth is the opposite of what is false.
Right.
Truth is the opposite of what is false.
Thank you.
There's our next one. Truth is the opposite of what is false. Okay. So, I mean,
that's true.
Can we say correct? I don't know. There's too many truths going on. I'm getting confused.
That is right.
I really, really wanted to talk about this one because I felt like on the heels of one that I did with V about 2 weeks back, it was assertion. And what we get is we get these emails from people saying, I'm disappointed. You should have gone this way or that way. And you didn't respond to every single one of them. The way these happen,
Yeah.
we can't. There's not enough time. And if we were to cut in and say, no, stop. And you did, you tried to, you held his feet to the fire several times. And each time you did, his response was an entirely separate assertion. And so you'd hold his feet to the fire enough until he gave an assertion that was weird or interesting enough that you just followed on to that one. And that was where the conversation went. So
then how would I try to get down to the nitty gritty and say, okay, how do we drop all this and figure out what your point is? I guess I should have said that, huh?
Yeah. And if he would have given a vague, ambiguous answer, be like, okay, you can either, here's your homework, come up with a way that you can talk about it so that you can come back and we can understand what the heck you're talking about, or quit answering with other assertions and either respond to the question or
get off the channel.
Get off the channel. Yeah. And I'm glad though that this happened. I'm glad that the caller called in because this argumentation style is one that is very familiar to me. It really, really is. And so I've got one more clip here.
If I can't prove to you that Little Mermaids do not exist, if I can't prove that, does that mean that they do?
Well, no, the fact that you can't doesn't mean anything because I know from my own knowledge that Little Mermaids
so you're the deciding factor because you're God's messenger,
not
right?
at all.
I got a little snarky there, but I think that was a little warranted.
You had every right to. You had every right to. And it ended soon after that. And you suggested that he call in to talk Ethan at the end of that. But, this was one example of how tempting it is for somebody to just leave all of these breadcrumbs and to take you on a journey instead of talking about anything of substance, instead of giving you definitions or challenging your view of the world. Instead, it was...
But that's not pointless, because we did get him to talk about things that he believed were true, and we got to expose how ridiculous it is.
That's true. But in the process of doing that, we had quite a few...
Yeah.
Let me see if I can even organize these in a way that's not here. Maybe there. Is that a little bit better? I mean, there's purpose and meaning in the universe. He's God's messenger. God's messenger means speaking the truth. Truth means whatever you submit to. Also, God is whatever you submit to. So God equals truth. And if you define it that way, then obviously, okay. And then also we have another definition of truth. Truth is the opposite of what is false. So does that mean God is the opposite of what? I don't know. I'm getting rid of this. This is insane.
It's hurting.
Right? But I'm glad we could go over it, because this is just another example of what kind of we deal with. That these callers, after the conversation, I mean, back me up here. We walk away from it like, what the hell was that?
People know this kind of conversation is difficult to have in the first place with anyone.
Yeah.
So when you do 5 or 6 or 10 back to back under a spotlight, speed demon,
Yeah.
You get out of there and you're like, what did I just say?
Right. What was any of that? Did we get anything actionable? No, nothing. Vapid. But at the same time, also we have to respond to those people who are saying, then why did you take the call in the first place? Because you got something out of it. We got something out of it. And what we got out of it is, if your argumentation style is like that, that's what you sound like.
Yeah.
That's enough.
So you don't think I was too rude? I felt like on that episode I was a little bit too snarky, but no? Okay.
No. I thought you were just fine. I think that if I were to offer any criticism, and just to be clear,
Please.
you were asking for it, so I'm not trying to be a jerk, and I will own my stuff. I promise. It was letting him lead the conversation and not pinning down. And you tried very hard to pin him down, and he would eventually give something that was appetizing enough that you, what? Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I am answering you. Entirely separate assertion. How does this entirely separate assertion get to an answer? Oh, entirely separate assertion. And it just goes from there.
You almost want to draw a map while they're talking.
You do. And ultimately, it looks kind of like this.
With arrows. And...
Yeah. Yeah. So we are trying, though.
Mm-hmm.
It just...
Sincerely.
Yeah.
Like, truly. Like, my goal is not to hammer people. I don't know that anybody's goal is to hammer people. We're trying to have conversations. We're trying to expose people's beliefs because it's ridiculous.
Yeah, they can be.
This is when people say, what's the harm? You don't think that there's harm that people believe this stuff? And they base their entire life on it? Like, people will choose this creature over government laws.
Yeah. And couch it in vague, ambiguous terms, like what you submit to. What the hell does that mean?
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
I don't know.
It's ridiculous.
That word submission. Oh, gives me chills.
Hey, you know what? It can be kind of fun in certain contexts. Anyway,
well, that's different.
That is a conversation for another day. Jenna, how can people find you?
I'm on YouTube, and that'll be www.youtube.com/JennaBelk. And I'm accepting donations at www.patreon.com/JennaBelk to try to help this movement. And I thank you, Eric, for having me on and teaching me.
Absolutely. I'm really happy to go over these, and it's fun to dive in, and going back and watching your first time hosting. You did
weird.
great, and it's just more and more and more. I've already got our next week's episode planned, and it is good. I'm really excited about it. So the links to all of your stuff are down in the comments. If you haven't checked out Jenna's channel, please make sure that you do. Everything should be there. Also, the link to this episode of the Atheist Experience is in the video description as well. Jenna, thank you for joining me. I'll see you next week.
Thank you. See y'all.
All right. That's it for this episode. Click here to subscribe and hit the bell icon if you want to get notifications for when I put out videos Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. If you want to get early access to those episodes and ad-free, go here, and you can go to my Patreon, which is where I provide early access and all kinds of other goodies. If you want to see my Lunatic Liar Lord video with Jenna, click here. See you next time.